My name is Claire, 27 now. The night my life split in two. I was 17. Mom threw a milestone dinner. Dad's company hit some target. The house buzzed with adults. My job? Refill wine, collect plates. Halfway through dessert, Mom clinked her glass. Cameras came out. She stood behind my chair. I have to show you all our pride and joy. This is our daughter. Pause. Our family mistake. Laughter rolled across the table. Dad pointed his fork. She's the 1% we wish we could write off. I pushed my chair back. I'm not laughing. Walked out. Packed. Set my house key down. You're going to regret saying that out loud, Dad chuckled. You'll be back by morning. I stepped into the night. Backpack. $43. A label I refused to carry. 8 years later, when they were broke, desperate, begging on my doorstep, I made them remember. If you've ever been called the family mistake, this is for you. The bus station smelled like burned coffee and bleach, but to me, it smelled like freedom. I bought the furthest ticket my money could reach. Austin, Texas. One way, no plan. On the overnight ride, my phone lit up with messages. Come back and stop embarrassing us. We'll talk in the morning. Don't do anything stupid. A few relatives added, they didn't mean it. Not one person asked if I was okay. I turned the phone off, pressed my forehead to the window, watched the dark slide by, wondering what I was now that I wasn't willing to be their mistake anymore. By the time the bus rolled into Austin, my money was down to loose bills and coins. The city hit me all at once, heat like a wet blanket, music bleeding from open doors. It was chaos, but honest chaos. No one here cared who my parents were. I found the cheapest hostel with a vacancy, paid for 3 nights, lay on the top bunk staring at the ceiling fan. 72 hours to figure out how not to sink. Next morning, I walked until my feet blistered, following help wanted signs. Most places shook their heads. We need someone with experience. We're not hiring minors. By late afternoon, hunger gnawed at my stomach, pride running on fumes. I pushed open the door to a corner diner, more out of desperation than hope. Cracked red booths, chrome stools, smell of frying oil. Behind the counter, a woman in her 50s with tired eyes was ringing up customers. I walked up, cleared my throat. Are you hiring? She looked me over, taking in my cheap sneakers, the way I swayed from exhaustion. You ever wait tables? No, I admitted, but I learned fast. I need work. I'll take any shifts you have. A guy carrying plates glanced over, smirked. She's got that no backup plan energy. That's useful. The woman snorted. We pay minimum plus tips. It's not glamorous. Neither is the bus station, I said. For the first time in 24 hours, someone laughed with me, not at me. She tossed me an apron. Name's Carla. Start with clearing tables. If you survive the lunch rush, we'll talk. I survived. I spilled 1 soda, mixed up 2 orders, almost cried when a customer snapped their fingers at me. But I also felt something I'd never felt at home. Every plate I carried mattered. My effort translated into cash I could fold into my pocket, not into some vague idea of family pride. The guy with the plates introduced himself during a lull. I'm Danny. So, what did you run from? The question was so blunt, I almost dropped the tray. Who says I ran? He raised an eyebrow. You've got that look. The one that says home wasn't safe, so anywhere else will do. I set the tray down. They called me the family mistake at a party. Everyone laughed, so I left. He nodded, like that made perfect sense. Good. You're where you need to be now. Over the next few months, I scraped together enough for a tiny studio, walls thin enough to hear neighbors arguing, but it was mine. Carla promoted me to full-time. Danny showed me how to work the system, pick up holiday shifts, save tips and cash. One regular customer noticed my sketchbook, asked what I was drawing. Fashion designs, clothes, ideas. She handed me a card. Community college has a design program. Financial aid covers a lot if you apply early. I stared at that card for 3 days, terrified. Then I applied, got in. Classes during the day, diner shifts at night, sleep when I could. But slowly, I started to build something that was actually mine. In my second year, a professor named Rachel pulled me aside after class. "Your work is angry," she said. "Not as criticism, as observation." That's good. Art that makes people comfortable rarely changes anything. Mid-semester, the department announced a citywide design competition. Big fashion house sponsor, cash prize, internship, press. Entry required a small collection around a theme. My classmates buzzed about trends. I went home, stared at a blank page. I knew what my theme was, but it felt dangerous to say it even in my own head. What it means to be told you're a mistake and live anyway. Eventually, I stopped pretending, leaned in. I sketched jackets that looked like armor, with deliberate scars of stitching where other designers would hide seams, dresses cut to move like someone walking away from a house on fire. A suit that seemed clean from the outside, but hid text embroidered inside the lining, where only the wearer would feel it. Every time I second-guessed myself, Rachel said, "If they're uncomfortable, good." Every time I wanted to quit, Danny shoved a to-go cup into my hand. "You didn't leave home to play it safe now." It wasn't glamorous. I broke needles, remade pieces, juggled shifts, skipped sleep. But slowly, the collection took shape. The last piece I finished was the black suit. Inside the jacket, in metallic thread where no one could see, I stitched 3 words. Not your mistake. When I knotted the final thread, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. On submission day, I turned in the collection, pretended I didn't care about the results, told myself just finishing was the win. A month later, while I was rethreading a machine in the studio, my phone lit up. Number from my hometown area code. I almost let it go. Curiosity won. "Hello?" Pause. Then a voice I hadn't heard in years. Deeper now, but unmistakable. "Claire." My chest tightened. Then, my little brother, the kid they'd wrapped in bubble wrap while I took the hits. "Yeah," he said, voice rough. "Got your number from Aunt Karen." My brain raced. "What's going on?" He let out a humorless laugh. "It's bad. Mom and Dad, they've screwed up. The business is gone, like really gone. Debts, bank coming for the house." I sank onto a stool. "And what does that have to do with me?" He hesitated. "They need help. Real help. And you're doing well, right? College, job, that design thing. People keep sending me your work." The irony was sharp. The family mistake had become the functional adult, while the perfect parents drowned in their own choices. "They're begging you to come home," Ben said quietly. "They said they were wrong about you, that they should have treated you better. They think you can fix this." Silence stretched. 8 years earlier, they joked about writing me off. Now, I was suddenly an asset. "Claire," he asked, "will you at least come hear them out?" I looked at the black suit hanging from the rack, the metallic words hidden inside. "Not your mistake." For the first time, the label they'd given me wasn't the one that mattered. Something colder settled in, the knowledge that this time, I held the power. The question was what I was going to do with it. I drove back to my hometown like heading to a crime scene. The closer I got, the more the scenery looked the same. Gas stations, faded billboard, but my chest tightened. I parked a block away, walked the rest, giving myself one last chance to turn around. The house that had been the backdrop of every perfect photo looked smaller. Lawn overgrown, paint peeling, foreclosure notice taped crookedly to the front door. For years, this place had been their favorite prop. Now it looked like a set nobody bothered to strike after the show closed. I rang the bell. Mom opened the door. For a second, we just stared. She'd always been meticulous, hair blown out, makeup done. Now her hair was scraped back, mascara smudged beneath red-rimmed eyes. "Claire," she breathed, like my name might break. Her gaze flicked over my simple dress, scuffed boots, posture that no longer folded on command. "Hi, Mom." The word felt strange. She stepped aside. "Come in." The house smelled stale, expensive candles and food smells gone. Piles of unopened mail cluttered the console table. A framed photo of that milestone dinner still sat on a shelf. I was in it, blurred in the background, half turned away. Dad stood in the living room, thinner, tie loosened, shoulders slumped. "You came," he said, like he hadn't expected it. "You asked," I replied. "I was curious what the end of the world looks like from your side." We sat in the living room where I'd once been lectured about gratitude. Ben leaned against the doorway, older and more tired than a 21-year-old should be. He gave me a small, guilty smile. I nodded back. "So," I said, "what happened?" For a moment, no one spoke. Then the story spilled out. Bad investments dressed up as opportunities, loans taken to cover previous loans, money shuffled to keep up the illusion. Dad's company had been bleeding for years. Instead of scaling back, they doubled down. Lawsuits now, creditors, friends sending cold emails instead of congratulations. "We thought we could fix it before anyone noticed," Mom said, twisting a tissue. "We always fix things." "You hid it," I said. "We didn't want you to worry." I laughed, short, sharp. "You had no problem letting me worry about whether I belonged, but sure, protect me from the bank statements." Mom's eyes filled. "We made mistakes." "You didn't make mistakes," I said. "You branded me as one. You turned me into a joke you could tell over dessert." Dad rubbed his forehead. "We were joking. That night got out of hand, but we never meant—" "You meant it enough to say it," I cut in. "You meant it enough that people still quote you." His head snapped up. "What do you mean, still?" I hesitated, then shrugged. "Someone filmed you calling me the family mistake. It's online." People I've never met have watched you laugh at your kid. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. No, that was a private dinner. Nothing's private when you perform cruelty for an audience, I said. Silence settled. And now you want something from me, I said. So say it. Dad straightened. We're going to lose the house. The business is finished. We've remortgaged everything. Your college fund... He broke off. My college fund? What? We used it. We thought we could pay it back before you needed it. We were wrong. Then you left. We assumed you wouldn't become anything. He didn't have to finish. Mom reached for my hand, stopped. We're not asking for a handout. We just need a bridge. Someone to help us get back on our feet. You're successful now. People talk about your designs. You could help us restructure. Maybe lend... So now I'm useful, I said, now that the golden facade cracked. Suddenly, the family mistake looks like an asset. It's not like that, she protested. It's exactly like that. 8 years ago, you asked what you'd do without me and laughed. Now you're finding out. Dad's composure slipped. We're scared, Claire. We're going to lose everything. I looked around at the expensive furniture, heavy curtains, framed certificates with their names in gold, everything they'd worshipped, everything they'd chosen over treating me like a person. You're wrong, I said quietly. You're not going to lose everything. You already did. You lost me. The words hung there. Mom sobbed, then swallowed hard. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like the smallest person in the room. I felt like the only one seeing clearly. The next day, I came back with a notebook full of numbers. If I was going to decide anything, I needed facts, not just the satisfaction of watching them squirm. We spread bank statements and legal notices across the same dining table where they'd once passed dessert and insults. Their situation was worse than I'd thought. Multiple mortgages, maxed cards, personal guarantees on loans gone bad. One line made my jaw tighten. Education fund liquidated. That was supposed to be mine. Dad didn't sugarcoat. We thought the next quarter would turn things around. When it didn't, we kept moving money. Mom added, You've always been resourceful. We knew you'd land on your feet. As if robbing me had been a compliment. Before I could answer, the doorbell rang. Mom jumped. We're not expecting anyone. I stood. Relax. I'm not the one hiding. I opened the door. My friend Maya stood on the porch, tattoos visible, metal rings catching light. She'd been my classmate. The one who'd once joked, If my parents called me a mistake, I'd put it on a t-shirt and retire. Now she raised an eyebrow. You ghost my texts? Your location pops up here. I figured either you'd been kidnapped or you finally came to see the people who broke you. Option 2, I said. Come in. She looked around the hallway, peeling paint, stacks of envelopes. So this is the palace, she murmured. Mom appeared, dish towel in hand, eyes wary. We're in the middle of a family discussion. This is private. Maya tilted her head. Is it? She pulled out her phone, tapped, then turned the screen toward my parents. The video played. Mom's voice over clinking cutlery. This is our daughter, the family mistake. Dad's follow-up, the roar of laughter. Underneath, thousands of comments calling them exactly what they were. Mom's face went gray. Dad lurched to his feet. Where did you get that? It's everywhere, Maya said. Forums, reaction videos, Can you believe these people compilations? You're a cautionary tale. Dad's anger snapped free. People don't know the context. They don't know our family. I stepped between them. You gave them the clip. That was you without filters. You thought no one outside this room would ever see it. You were wrong. Mom sank into a chair. We never meant for it to hurt you like this. It was just a joke. Maya cut in. Funny how the people laughing never seemed to be the punchline. She looked at me. You okay? It was the only time anyone in this house had asked me that without an agenda. Ben stared at the table. I saw the video last year. I told myself it had to be edited. I didn't want to believe it. He shook his head. I should have said something sooner. I let out a breath. You were a kid. They were the adults. I turned back to my parents. Here's the problem. You talk about this like you made mistakes and everything else was fine. But this, I gestured at the video, is who you are when you're comfortable. You turned your own kid into entertainment. You drained my college fund to keep the show going. And now you want me to help you rebuild the stage. Dad's shoulders dropped. You're right. So what happens now? Do you walk away and let the internet finish us? He was finally saying the quiet part out loud. He was more afraid of humiliation than losing the house. For a heartbeat, I pictured it. A thread where I laid everything out. Interviews, headlines, their faces plastered under the word abusive. It would be easy. It would feel good. And then it would be over. That would be too simple, I said. If I help you at all, it won't be to restore what you had. That version of your life is dead. I pulled a folded document from my bag, set it on the coffee table. This is a draft agreement. Basic terms. I'm not handing over money on a promise. If we go forward, it's in writing. Dad picked it up, eyes scanning clauses. Limited support, sale of luxury assets, public statements, therapy, boundaries about contact. You came prepared, he said, surprise edging into his voice. You really have become someone. I always was, I said. You just didn't like the version that didn't make you look good. In the end, they signed. After a few last-minute calls to lawyers and one meltdown about airing dirty laundry, the pen met paper. The fallout came fast. Foreclosure, cars sold, vacation timeshare gone. They left the neighborhood they'd treated like a stage, moved into a small rental on the edge of town. The kind of place they used to describe as where people who don't plan ahead end up. Now they were those people. I kept my side of the agreement, paid enough of the worst debt to keep them out of the streets, hired a financial counselor, then stepped back. They had to make the hard calls themselves. The public apology happened in a community center room. Few dozen locals showed up, more watched online. I streamed it from my apartment in Austin, the black suit hanging behind me like a shadow. Mom spoke first. Years ago, I called my own daughter the family mistake. I thought I was being clever. I was being cruel. She looked at the camera. Claire, I'm sorry. Not just for that night, but for every time I used you as a joke. Dad followed, admitted he'd made me the punchline of their success story, treated my feelings like collateral damage. The chat filled with people doubting them, praising them, dragging them. That noise wasn't mine to manage. The apology was their starting line, not my closure. While their lives shrank down, mine grew. The collection I'd submitted won second place. Enough money to breathe. Internship offer I leveraged into something better. I launched a small brand built around what had kept me upright: sharp lines, visible seams, hidden messages for the wearer. I called the first collection 1%. Danny handled logistics, Rachel branding, Maya social media. Meanwhile, my parents clocked into jobs with name tags. Mom folded clothes in a mid-range store. Dad processed paperwork at a small office. Their old circle quietly stopped inviting them. They weren't pariahs. They were invisible. For two people who'd built identity on being impressive, that was steady punishment. The twist came a year later when the bank moved to auction the house. I flew in, sat at the back of the room, raised my paddle at the right moment. The house sold for a fraction of what they'd bragged it was worth. The deed ended up in my name. "You said you wouldn't save the house," Dad said when I told them. "I didn't," I answered. "I bought a building. What it's for now is my choice." We stripped it. The dining room where they'd humiliated me became an open studio space. Upstairs, bedrooms turned into small classrooms and workrooms. Using prize money and brand profits, I opened a nonprofit there. Sewing classes, portfolio help, small grants for kids who'd been written off as problems, wastes, mistakes. On the front door, in clean metal letters, we mounted a sign, "The Not a Mistake Project." Underneath, smaller text, "For anyone who was ever told they were the problem." The first time my parents visited, they stood on the sidewalk, staring at the sign. Inside, the place was unrecognizable. Mismatched chairs, mood boards on walls, teenagers in thrifted clothes arguing about color palettes. Mom paused in what used to be my bedroom, now lined with sewing machines. A girl with purple hair hunched over a jacket, tongue sticking out in concentration. "Do they know everything?" Mom asked. "They know enough," I said. "They don't need my worst memories to benefit from my best choices." In the former dining room, I'd left one thing: the old light fixture overhead. No long table, no head seat, just a circle of chairs and a whiteboard covered in ideas. Dad looked around. "You really erased us." "No," I replied. "I outgrew you. There's a difference." He swallowed. "We're trying. Therapy. Work. No more jokes like that." "Good. That's about who you are now. This place isn't about you at all." We're not some neatly healed family. Some holidays I answer their calls. Some I don't. Dad's health isn't great after the stress. Mom hates crowds. Suddenly aware any stranger's phone could be pointed at her. They live in a small apartment, budget for bills, watch sales. That's their life. They built it. Mine is loud and real. I spend my days fitting jackets on kids who thought they'd never put their names on anything worth keeping, and my nights sketching new ways to turn ugly words into armor. Sometimes when I lock up the old house, I run my fingers over the metal letters on the door. Remember the scrape of my chair against the floor? The night I walked out. People say revenge is about destroying the people who hurt you. For me, it was about destroying the version of myself who still needed their approval, and building something they couldn't enter on their own terms. So I'll leave you with this. If the people who broke you showed up years later, crying and begging you to save them, would you open the door? And if you did, whose rules would you finally live by?